He wasn't wrong, though. Our parents did indeed give him a lot of praise and attention, while they only ever yelled at me and even occasionally slapped me. "Vincent, can't you do anything right? Why can't you be more like your older brother and get straight A's?" "I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm trying my best. And I do get good marks, just not as high as Scott's." Hi there, my name is Vincent, and my brother and I have always had a terrible rivalry. It wasn't something that we had chosen to engage in, really, but our parents pretty much encouraged it. Well, actually, they pretty much forced it upon us. They always considered my older brother Scott to be their golden child. After all, he got better grades than I did, and he was always better at sports as well. I truly did try, though, but no matter how much I studied or how hard I trained, I just couldn't compete with him. Not to mention, I knew that Scott would one day be given my father's company, and I would be expected to be one of his employees, which meant that I would always be his servant, and that terrified me. My father owned a company that manufactured car parts, and he would constantly tell Scott that he would one day be given the company. Poor stupid Vincent. Such a shame that you're too stupid. Will you stop rubbing it in? School isn't a contest. Oh, but that's where you're wrong. It's a contest for mom and dad's attention and love, and you're losing big time. Ha, I'm just surprised that they chose to keep you instead of abandoning you at the side of the road. But then again, who would be my slave once we were older if they did that? I can't wait to constantly make you do the dirtiest and most awful jobs at the factory. He wasn't wrong, though. Our parents did indeed give him a lot of praise and attention, while they only ever yelled at me and even occasionally slapped me. "Vincent, can't you do anything right? Why can't you be more like your older brother and get straight A's?" "I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm trying my best. And I do get good marks, just not as high as Scott's."
Well, it isn't good enough. Every time you bring home these subpar grades, we get more and more disappointed in you.
It was so demoralizing, and their constant abuse was beginning to make me feel constantly afraid. Every time I would receive a mark that was less than an A, I knew that they would yell at me until I cried, and more than likely would slap me hard enough to split my lip, while Scott just would watch and laugh at my pain. It got so bad that the sound of my father's feet coming up the stairs of our house would put me into panic mode. I just couldn't take much more of it, and so on the day when I turned 18, I quickly packed my bags and left a note saying that I wouldn't live with them another minute and that I was leaving. An hour after I left the house, my phone rang, and it was my parents. "What on earth do you think you are doing? Get back here right now." "There's no way that I will. I'm done with putting up with your abuse, and having the only thing to look forward to is to put up with Scott's abuse for the rest of my life. I'm an adult now, and I don't know what I'll end up doing, but regardless of what it is, it will be far better than the future that you and Mom planned for me." And with that, I hung up. It was true that I didn't really have much of a plan, but I did know that anything would be better than living with those cruel people. After a few more hours, I began to get hungry, and so I wandered into a restaurant that specialized in noodles. And after enjoying a very delicious meal, I saw that they were hiring, and I asked the owner if I could apply. "Please, sir, can I apply to work in your kitchen?" "You? You want to work here? Shouldn't you be going off to college at your age?" I told him about my life and what I had done, and he was incredibly sympathetic. "Oh wow, that's a pretty tragic story. I'll tell you what, there's a small bachelor's apartment above the restaurant that you can use, and I'll train you and teach you everything I know. But you have to work incredibly hard and show me that you deserve it. Do we have a deal?" I of course agreed. Not only was this a way to make money, but it came with a place to stay as well. Over the next few weeks, Gordon taught me all of his recipes and even allowed me to experiment and come up with a few of my own, some of which began to attract more and more patrons to the restaurant. I had impressed Gordon with how quickly I was learning how to cook, and he was doubly impressed that my cooking skills were increasing his sales as well. So much so that he gave me a handsome raise and approached me with an idea. "Hey, listen, you've done amazing things here, and in an incredibly short time too. What do you say about maybe expanding this business with me?" "What do you mean?" "Well, I own property on the other side of town, and I was wondering if you would run a noodle shop there, like a franchise. You would have to hire your own staff and train them, and I would definitely increase your salary. What do you think?" It sounded like a great idea to me, so of course I agreed. The first few weeks were very stressful, but my staff and I began to work well together like a well-oiled machine, and before long, we were making massive profits. We were doing so well that Gordon came to me and asked if I thought that we should expand again. At first, I looked at him like he was crazy, but then I realized that it hadn't been that difficult to train the new staff and get them to a point where they were making money. Gordon, I think it's a crazy idea but a brilliant one too. I think we should definitely keep expanding, but I'll only do it on one condition. What's your condition? That we do it as partners. After seeing how well you got this location in Shapey, I think you have a deal. And just like that, we became business partners. Before long, we had over 20 restaurants all over the country, and were making plans to open new ones in the neighboring countries as well. As it turned out, my expertise was never in math or anything I learned in school, but in making good business relationships. I was good with people, and that made me a great businessman. After a few years, we had grown quite the empire, and it was at that time that I got a phone call from my brother. I had always suspected that my family might reach out one day, but definitely was not prepared for what he demanded of me. Hey doofus. So I've heard some good things about you. Hey Scott, what exactly do you want? Easy there, little man. I'm just calling to give you a great opportunity. How would you like to invest in Dad's company? Dad's company? What are you talking about? Dad and I heard that you came into a little bit of money, and we wanted to give you a chance of helping the family out. How does 20% of the company in exchange for $1 million sound? It sounded like a scam to me, but I wasn't going to let on that I smelled deceit. That sounds like a pretty great idea. Let me talk to my financial advisor and see how I can shift some money around. I'll call you in a few days, okay? The second after I hung up the phone, I began scouring the internet for information about my father's company, and what I found made me laugh. As it turned out, the factory had been understaffed because of poor management and had been producing poor quality parts. Because of this, they had been losing contracts, and the value of the company plummeted to less than $250,000. My brother and father were indeed trying to scam me, but I wasn't going to fall for their nonsense. With this evaluation in mind, I then called the bank where my father's business dealt with and inquired about the status of his company. They told me that my father was in serious trouble. He had gained a significant amount of debt as he had kept borrowing money to keep his business afloat, and that if he didn't pay the bank $250,000 by the end of the week, that the company would be sold off to cover his debts. Hearing this gave me an idea, and all I had to do was wait a few days. All that week, my brother and father kept calling me and leaving messages on my voicemail, demanding that I call them back immediately. Of course, I never did, until Saturday, that is. Hey Dad, it's been a while since we've spoken. How are you doing? Terrible. You missed the deadline, and now the company is in ruin. Are you happy? You ruined the family business. No, Dad. You and Scott ruined the family business. As of a couple hours ago. I saved the family business, but I did it for much less than what you have been demanding from me. What are you talking about? Well, it's really simple. I bought your company from the bank, which means I'm now your boss. And as my first act as your boss, both you and Scott are fired. Ha! You can't be serious. Oh, I very much am. In fact, security guards should be entering your office right now to escort you and Scott off of my property. Just then, I could hear a scuffle as security guards dragged my father and brother out of their office and out of the building. The sounds of their wailing as they were dragged away was music to my ears. Months later, I had been able to broker new contracts for the factory and had hired experts in the industry to fix the many issues that had plagued the company under my father's and brother's leadership. With some elbow grease and the skills I had learned working with Gordon, I was able to make the company profitable again. I still maintained my partnership with Gordon, of course, but I figured that it didn't hurt to diversify a bit. As for my parents and brother, after being kicked out of their company, they tried to sue me, but my lawyers made sure to tie them up in court until they ran out of money. Now the three of them work minimum wage jobs and occasionally try to call me to yell at me for ruining their lives. The tragedy of it is that they, of course, did this to themselves, but are too stubborn to see it that way. So in the end, I got the last laugh. My parents had always treated me terribly and treated Scott like a winner, but in the end, I proved that they had backed the wrong son. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.